last week we talked about the interview setup, just some of the options that you have. Staying very much in the expository area, I'm going to show you how I assemble and some of the stuff I do when I'm putting together one of my films. So to start, just from the very beginning here, I'm going to be doing this in Premiere today. You can use whatever software you like, especially for this class. I highly recommend these SSDs, these external storage devices. There's a lot of different options on Amazon. You want to get one with speed if you're going to work from it. Now this one is a Samsung T7, 4 terabyte, costs about $200 on a Prime Day deal. It's kind of pricey if you're a student trying to live in the dorms and work on a budget, but there are a lot of other cheaper options, and 4 terabytes is more than you would ever need for most of the class. Pretty much that would get you through the entire program likely. They have all the way down to ½ terabyte. That's much more affordable. This project that I did is from 2018. It was all done in 1080p. So we're talking less than 100 gigabytes for the entire film altogether, give or take. It's been a while since I've got to go through all of it. Your great options here, I do recommend just checking out something like Amazon, not the book here, let's see. If we just look up SSD, a 1 terabyte is what my brother's been using, that Michael, who's in the program as well. He has a 1 terabyte SSD that, let's go to, let's do this Samsung. You want to make sure you don't get one that requires you to, you want an external. If you have an internal, there are things that we have called toasters, because you decide to get an internal that could go inside your computer, you could take it back and forth with a toaster, but it's an extra component that you need. I really like the externals that just plug in from USB. And so here's one right here, 2 terabyte, $99, 1,000 megabytes per second is way fast enough to edit 4K, 6K, RAW files, high frame rates. So that one's actually a really good deal. A little bit more expensive, $40 more, about twice the speed. These are also not proprietary to Apple or Windows. You set it up when you get it. Yeah, Dayton, do you have a thought?
So I know that you can install drives directly into a computer. Are there any benefits to that compared to?
No, that's a great question, because we kind of just through your time as a media professional, you're going to have to be a bit of a software and computer engineer to an extent. I would say there is a perk, and that would be not having the cabling to run through, and it's just going straight in. Outside of that, you're talking about less mobility. So now in my experience, my company has about 30, 40 terabytes of these. We'll buy them for a project, we'll buy them when they're on deals, and we just save stuff on them. I say this all the time, it's going to come back on me sometime. We've never lost one of our Samsung T5s or T7s, and we've been shooting with those for about 5 years and use them a lot. And we've used them in extreme conditions, including high humidity and freezing temperatures when we're shooting in Canada. So they're great. You can also record to them depending on the device. But I would say, like this one right here, this 1 terabyte T7 Shield is the same as this one, and it has a protective case on it, so if you drop it, it gives a little extra buffer. They're super durable. And they come with a couple of cords. So I have these cords just falling out of my pockets anymore because they come with 2 or 3 each. And for $80, being a Black Friday deal, pretty good deal. I haven't even seen this one at T9. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to go buy another one. That is new. It's brand new. Check reviews. We do know Amazon can pad reviews, and we know Amazon can have fake reviews. But to a certain extent, 30,000 reviews is going to take a lot of time to have a bot do that. So when I'm on Amazon, looking at whether it's a tripod, whether it's an SD card, especially these media-based devices, I like to check and see what people said about it. So another thing to consider, we'll click on this one. They have different sizes, as I said, 1, 2, and 4, and they have different colors. For whatever reason, probably inventory things, probably who the actual shop it's going through, they're not always consistently the same ones are the best deal. So I like to check and see, all right, so 4 terabyte is going for $200. So at that point, I'm getting $100 per terabyte, or sorry, $50 per terabyte. That's a pretty good deal. That's a fantastic deal. And then at 120 for 2 terabytes, now I'm getting $60 per terabyte. Okay. And then 1 terabyte, I'm getting, what was it, $80 per terabyte. So if I go with the 4, I'm saving $30 a terabyte from that from that point. Now, for some reason, the colors tend to change the price sometimes, or in this case, there's just not an option here for that one. I always wanted to have like the white ones so I could write on them better, because it's hard for me to, sticky notes fall off of these things. And when you have so many, if you just have 1 or 2, it's pretty easy to keep your head straight. But that's something I recommend. Now that you've been through the program, some of you a couple of semesters now, some of you at least a few months, it's good to start thinking about this, especially if you're working from home. Some of you work from a laptop, some of you work from your dorm. In that case, it's good to have, you still want to have a cloud-based system. Google Drive's what I typically use. It's not perfect, but it's very affordable for my needs, and it's great for sharing. The project I did last week for a workshop that they did on campus, I was able to just edit it back here, share it on Google Drive, and then the people in the advising department were able to grab it and share it with the rest of the staff that couldn't be there. So cloud systems are wonderful, but these are great if you're going to be working on a lot of projects, you're going to be moving around, you're going to be mobile, shooting in another location and dumping everything in your hotel room to that so you can get back to a safe spot. Always duplicating your media. This computer on the left that's not turning on for me again is a great example of don't have your stuff in one place. They've been in to check that computer 4 times this semester, I think now. So you do not want to trust any in particular location that stuff exists. You want to make sure that you are constantly saving stuff, backing it up, and protecting your projects, right? And in this case, working from the correct project. Do not edit from your SD cards. Those are made to gather media, they're not made to work from. So you want to work from either your internal hard drive or from an SSD. In this case, I did all of this prepping at home because I had this project, this 5-year-old project, so I didn't need it anywhere else. Put it on here, I'm able to bring it here. I haven't done anything with this project on this computer, and it's all here ready to go. And probably faster than this old dinosaur computer too. Okay, any questions about SSDs and storage? It's always updating, so I mean just like that, the T9's out. I had no idea until I saw that. So very exciting to see. One of the beautiful things about where we are at in our industry is the tech is moving fast, the prices are getting cheaper, inflation has not affected cameras and SD cards and batteries the way it's affected things like groceries and vehicles. So we've been very fortunate to see not only has the equipment that I'm shopping regularly for us and for my company stayed at where it's at, in some cases dropped. So the tech, there's a ton of competition, there's a lot of things being released, and there's a lot of access. So Amazon is, have your opinion here or there about Bezos and all that, but man, if you're an independent producer and you need an SD card overnight, Amazon's awesome. You need a cleaning kit overnight, you need a tripod real fast. I used to have to drive to Wichita for these things, so imagine how much more convenient this is that I've ordered an SD card or an SSD and had it later that next morning. Like, it's crazy. So take advantage of those awesome things. One time it took me 3 months to find a FireWire cable when I was in college. I finally found it on newegg.com. It's this brand new website that still exists, still works. And I was living with my aunt at the time, and she threw it away. She didn't know what it was. So then I found one from a guy at work, sold me his. It was just not easy to do 20 years ago to find the thing you needed. Also, it took me probably a couple of weeks to figure out what the cable was and what it was even called. And so now you just Google and you find this stuff. So take advantage of those opportunities. All right, into why we're here. All right, so I've got my SSD, I've put my project on it, I've shot my documentary, at least the vast majority of it. I'm ready to start piecing together my interview. And I don't know exactly how far I'll get through this. Keep in mind, this took me, I think I had 6 different exports. Easily had well over 100 hours probably in assembling all of this when I edited it years ago. I really couldn't tell you for sure because it's been a while. But it's one of my favorite films. Josh Tripoli was a a painter, an illustrator, writer, muralist, kind of all-around artist, really talented, out of Wichita. And so he granted us an interview. We met him the day of. Actually, let me see if I got. This is more. Yeah. I did include this in your assignment for you to see. So if you watch through, this is Josh.
I think that it is something that
I was trying to decide if I wanted to watch it before or after. I think we'll go ahead and watch it before, and then I can talk about it. It's about 6 minutes. It's a good runtime for a short film. It played at a couple festivals. The big festival I got into is Tallgrass, 2018, 2019, something of that sort, and was able to play in the Wichita Art Museum a couple of times. So it got some pretty good attention and led to some other projects. Okay, what did I do?
I think that it is something that we're all born with, and it's just a matter of practice to really take us to the point.
Creativity is inherent, and I think that it is something that we're all born with, and it's just a matter of practice to really take us to the point where we could call ourselves artists. I am actually from Dixon, Illinois, Ronald Reagan's hometown, where I grew up until I was about 7 or 8. Then we moved to Wichita to be closer to my grandparents. So I've been here ever since and am a practicing Wichitan. I love Wichita. Wichita's got so much good stuff going on for it right now, especially there's a renewed sense of pride around the arts, all kinds of stuff around the city. There's just so many things that are out of your control. And I think it takes an artist to really embrace that and embrace that fear and embrace that lack of control and navigate the chaos with confidence and grace. There's a great Picasso quote, something like, everyone's born an artist and the hard part is staying one. My main influences growing up would probably be my direct family. So my parents would always draw with me, my siblings would. So I had a good obsession with dinosaurs, and I would draw dinosaurs over and over and over again. In middle school and high school, the next big influencer on my work would be the surrealists. Things like automatic writing, stream of consciousness, the paranoiac critical method from Salvador Dali. Post-college, I kind of had a really raw wealth of emotional material that I could craft from, and I felt that realism and surrealism were not adequately sufficient to express what I felt at the time. This kind of led me to grand emotional breakdown of traditional representation in art. Abstract work just kind of poured out of me. So this was something that came out of a real place of need, no other artistic influence to speak of. Gave me a really critical understanding of truly the sublime in life and in art. It kind of pivoted back toward representation and furthermore public art. It kind of led me to do a lot of murals. There's actually been quite a few iconic murals around town that we've been a part of as Lupoli, me and my girlfriend. And you realize that through representation you're able to affect a much wider group of people in a really public and powerful way. I don't try and limit myself or even think too far into the future about what's coming. You know, I try and just focus on what I love and what interests me and let that push me into the future. I'd always had parents who'd been really supportive of my interest in the arts. They'd always pushed me into art classes, painting classes. My grandparents drew, they were very good at it. My dad did too. And I think that's just one of the things that I was surrounded by constantly growing up. I usually work with traditional mediums like oil, acrylic, pencil, ink, sometimes clay. You know, whether you feel like you're succeeding or failing, it truly doesn't matter as long as you're just creating. This retrospective in a way that showcases that actually starts when you're a child, you know? You don't have to be like 80 years old to have a good amount of experience under your belt. And I want people to really understand that it is progress, you know, and that things are getting better, and that it's okay to suffer, that eventually things are all right, you know? And I think that's a universal truth that I think we could all do well to remember, that everything is all right at any given moment, that it is getting better. And I hope that this show can help people see that. Sisyphus, for those who don't know, is actually a Greek story, and it would be a character who was cursed to carry a boulder up a mountain. And the curse was that once he got to the top, he would have to go all the way back down and do it again. And this is something he would do for eternity. I think it's the story of an artist and the story of life, and that we should be content with carrying that weight. We all have that cross to bear. Retrospective actually affords me an opportunity to exhibit a lot of these works that have just been kind of hanging out in my parents' collection or just hanging out in my studio, and really do something cool with them. So it's a really great thing to be able to show those kind of pivotal pieces in this exhibit. Emergence is another one that was kind of a critical juncture between my representational and my abstracts. So you can really see these kind of transitions as you move throughout the gallery, how you might start seeing things losing certain points of fixation and planes dissolving and shifting and opening up, and really just kind of resting in this space that could be a multitude of things. It could be any infinity of what the mind wants to project onto it. I think my creativity at this point is definitely trying to expand into all kinds of other things too. You'll see some really cool works that are kind of these transitory states where they flip between representation and non-representation, where you can see discernible things or you can just see what you imagine. So it's a really cool thing as an artist to be able to let these things happen and progress and just just kind of be there to see them through, kind of letting your children grow. The artistic path is not always so cut and dry. It's always taking turns, and it's transforming, and it's getting better, it's refining. I think it's a great opportunity to see that over the course of 20 years of someone's life. And it's hard to say, where this work is even going. I'm still so young, I couldn't even fathom, where I'm gonna be able to take it in just even 10 years' time. I think there's a lot of fear that naturally goes with any creative pursuits. It'd be, losing creativity, falling back, hitting against a wall, creative blocks. Whether the public's gonna accept it or be moved by it in any positive way or negative. I want to be able to show that it is a grind, and being an artist is something that you have to work at over and over and over and over again. Just working at it over time, really just keep creating.
Okay, so
Creativity is inherent, and I think that it is something that we're all born with.
it's a lot to unpack there. We used this for a lot of different purposes to promote his art show at the Art Center. It played on KPTS in a 5-minute cut. They wanted it under 5 minutes, so it fit better in their slots. And then we had a longer version for festivals, and that was this one. So the Art Center version had a call to action at the end online where it says art show, blah, 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 come see this amount of money or whatever. If you have that kind of call to action, I found, and you put those in film festivals, you'll get denied right away because there's a separate area for that. Marketing festivals where like FedEx can compete against UPS for best logo. Those are just kind of a different avenue and a different purpose for those pieces. So we found on our first one of this segment that it was just getting denied, but even disqualified doesn't really change anything on your end. It just sounds a little more like we're not even watching it or not even considering it because it's a marketing piece. So we would take out that call to action, just put in our logos for the different entities incorporated with the project, and then it started being a lot more successful. So we would chop it down for KPTS, we would add a call to action for the Art Center, and then we would have kind of your director's cut for festivals. And that's what this one was. I'm not a graphic person, I'm not a title person, I don't really like After Effects, so I go with a really clean, easy, simple title to make that really, really black and white for us, that I'm not going to try and over design something that is just not really my skill set. If I had the budget, then I would have likely hired a designer or someone with After Effects background to help us do something a little more, a little higher production value, but it's what I was able to do with what we had. accumulating all of his work, all of this B-roll, all of this archival, working with him, working with his partner and girlfriend for their company to get a lot of that stuff from the murals and things, and then matching up these photos with timing, and some of them are animated, some of them are spaced in different places, depending on what he was discussing through our hour interview and how I cut this into 6 minutes was difficult. Just lining up all the way down to the image, like the painting he did of his girlfriend when he talks about his girlfriend, matching that dialogue visually is way more appealing than one of my original rough drafts. I didn't have all the photos in place yet, and so it was just him talking, and it just is way more dry. But when he actually mentions his girlfriend, well, if he has an image of his girlfriend, dig it out of the hundreds that he sent you, and take time to do that.
This is the polling and the girlfriend. And you,
so even that is, every little bit, every little frame is tedious, and you guys are already getting that. You've been through post one, or audio, or you've been through script writing, you've been this class, so you're learning that every even just like the simplest concept can take a lot of time. Let's dive in. Well, let me talk a little bit more about where we left off from last week with the production end.
creativity is inherent, and I think that it is something that we're all born with, and it's just a matter of practice.
So his opening image here, I loved how it was framed up. I really felt good about that. Okay, it's because I have that.
So my main influences growing
This is-
up, I think initially and immediately it was my parents. So my direct family was always very creative, growing with my siblings growing up, having them just fully supporting me.
I opened it twice, that must probably happen. So here's a quick little behind the scenes that I snapped. We're in a very tight office. That's why I have my Cam 2 on a shoulder mount, because we just didn't have room for another tripod. Our audio guy, you'll see, is literally reaching around the corner to get the boom pole in. You can see Dustin here. C100 on the shoulder mount. That's why that second angle is a little more shaky, but not really shaky. It's kind of living because it's kind of moving. So that was a cognizant thing when I was editing. Is okay. I have my steady shot. Like, I love this frame of him. So the camera I ran was from this angle. This is our Cam 1. Medium shot, waist up, eyes on the top third. All things that are extremely important. I have my key light coming off to his right. I didn't want it there. I would have preferred to have been on this side typically, and that's what I would have shown you on class the other day. However, there was nowhere on that side of the room to put the light, so I couldn't do that. And then you'll notice our shadows. Our shadows are very, very soft, not overly done, but not high key lighting like what you'll see in news and broadcast. It's still got some emotion because he's an artist and he's kind of a graphic artist. You know, he has some pretty interesting images. Some have violence, romance, those kinds of things. I wanted it to have a little bit more emotion in the shadows. You can see it a little more there from Dustin's camera. This image isn't great. If you have the 5K monitor, you see better. His left side of the frame is definitely darker than the right, but we didn't have it so emotional that it's like blacked out in that two-face look that I was talking about, where you put the light all the way over here, and then they're casting almost entirely no light on the other side. I still wanted to be able to see that and fill that in. So let me show you. Normally, as I set up the other day, I like to have both those cameras for the interviews on tripods. We have our producer and our interviewer here crammed right over my shoulder because I'm Cam 1 and I wanted him looking across the frame, as we talked about. So he's looking at Pat, because Pat's who he's talking to. You do not want to have 3 people on set and everyone asking questions. You don't want their head going here, you don't want their head going here. It's very frustrating for your audience, for your editor, and even for your interviewer to not know who to look at. You want to have one person asking questions. That's going to help keep things smooth and professional. Now, I do like, if time allows, now keep in mind, we came in with a whole slew of notes. I had never met Josh till this day. None of us had actually met Josh till this day. And so we had our notes ready. We'd looked at his work. He had done some other stuff. He'd been on the news, and he had been in other projects of various sorts, a lot of shows around the country. So we were able to research Josh, but had not had time to sit down with him. So where this went really was a huge pain for us was not in the interview itself, but we didn't get a location scout. We didn't get to see how tiny that office was in a basement, and Joey was coming. And so Pat didn't even think to like you can go, hey, do you have stairs? Like it didn't even make sense for him to ask that at the time. He was so worried about all these other things. We were multitasking like crazy. He forgot to ask if there was accommodations for Joey's wheelchair. So Joey couldn't even get into the house, and then he definitely couldn't get into the basement. Super narrow stairway down to the basement. Kind of remembering this as it goes through. So we had to throw the camera on the shoulder rig because the tripod just wasn't an option. There's Frank, pretty big guy, football player, state wrestler. So our boom pole guy, just not a lot of room for him in there. So he actually ended up sitting on the floor and just lifting it around the side by the time it got to the whole hour because he couldn't come in the room with us. You can kind of see a quick pan of the room there. Not a lot of space. I had to throw this light over here just because that was where the outlet set and everything. We're just fortunate that we had a 3-prong outlet because I've got on set before with other similar projects, and we realized there's only 2-prong outlets in this whole room. We had to run extensions out to get our story in there. And so these were all different things that were taking place that were affecting, how the production would go. And then I had a photographer below me, little light panel, and then we had, so the light panel is for him, and this softbox, and we have both these lights still, they both work, was really for the background, trying to get that lit to help separate him from that background a little bit, give a little more exposure in the room. So it's a very dark room too. And I typically like to, if they're fluorescents like this, I'll just turn them off and I'll light everything with natural light or my cinema lights. And then we had a photographer under all of us, shooting with the student cam. Now that's a whole other thing. We had to train our photographer, and he was very good at this because he did it a lot, but he had to be instructed to wait to snap shots until we were asking questions, because as you can tell, we cut ourselves out entirely. We wanted Josh or our talent to tell their own story. So that photographer had to be instructed to wait until Patrick was talking, and then you hear click, 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 and then after he asked the question, then he wasn't allowed to take a photo again until Josh was done talking. There's nothing quite like losing a really good soundbite for a photo image that might just be used for marketing. And then you can see my specs here slightly, but none of that's too important for today. But one of the things you can see is I was recording to both cards simultaneously. I wasn't going to take the chance of losing this interview and having to reschedule it, because all of this was a lot of work just to get all of us crammed into this basement that day. I am recording audio. You can see it coming through. It just says I'm recording audio to this camera, send camera. But it's only reference audio. It is not clean audio. So listen to how it sounds from my cell phone.
My parents, so my direct family, is always very
Real echoey,
growing
you know.
up.
That's very much how we'll hear the cameras. When you hear the film itself, you can hear
For those who don't know,
how much
it's
cleaner that
actually
is.
a Greek.
So we actually went from the lav. We had the boom pole as another option, went from the lav. We ended up not using the boom pole. He had a roommate upstairs that was getting ready for work, and so, if I remember correctly, and the kitchen was directly above the basement. So everywhere that person stepped and turned on a faucet and closed a cabinet, ruined a shot. Like we literally stopped and started a couple of times because of that. And they weren't being rude, it was just circumstantial. It was when we could be there and they needed to get out. So documentary has all of these components to it that can really make it kind of a pain in a way. So let's dive into Premiere Pro. This is what I edited in 2018, so I still have the 2018 version. I'm actually kind of curious to try to open that real fast. I'm not sure where everything is lying. I always like to save these. This version is 5 years older. Now you can go forward with a version, and as some of you figured out, you can't go backwards. You cannot go from 2023 and jump on a 2018. For instance, the computer in my office is old enough that it only will update to 2021. So if I'm working in 2021, if I come in here, I'm gonna have to update it to the new version. But if I'm working on 2023 and here, and when I go back to my office, I can't do that back and forth. So I don't wanna relink everything currently, but take a look at how many clips and cuts and layers that there are. And I'm really pretty clean about this. When I was in process, when I was really diving into it, there may have been a few more, maybe not. So we're looking at 6 visual layers altogether and 4 total audio layers in order to get everything assembled the way it is. And it's pretty tedious once you get through. It's pretty intimidating once you look at all of it, but ultimately, have you guys ever seen layers where it's like 2 dozen on the top, dozen on the bottom, a lot of effects driven, a lot of color, a lot of adjustment layers, things like that. This is a whole lot of the interviews laid out, and then you have a whole lot of images, all those photos of his work, his paintings and his murals and things like that are peppered in. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much time went into just assembling and making sure every single frame is matched up so you don't get what we call a drop frame where there's just black for 1/24 of a second. Okay, so I'm going to start it over and show you kind of how I get everything rolling just to create a new one here. 2018 was it was alright. I think I liked working in that software. It crashed quite a bit, that was frustrating, but the features that it had, I did everything in it. I didn't do anything. One of our students edited the audio separately, so the lob did have slight cleanups just for furnace or some sort of room tone that might need it cleaned up. Outside of that, all the color correction, the very simple graphics, all the audio adjustments, everything was done in Premiere Pro, which is fantastic because when we first started doing nonlinear editing, you might have a software to touch up the audio, a separate software to color, another software to export, maybe even a software to organize your media. Premiere Pro was pretty all-encompassing, which was why I chose it at that time. DaVinci existed, Final Cut Pro was really popular in the program at that time because it was a little easier to jump into. Anymore, Final Cut Pro is all but dead in the program, and DaVinci is probably the more popular of the options. But for this particular focus, it's not really so much about the exact software as it is the process of how you assemble it, because you're going to do the same core things. All of them, all nonlinear editors typically do the same stuff to some extent. Okay, so first things first, project name. You definitely don't want to mess with ignoring this. You don't want to have Untitled 1, Untitled 2, Untitled 3. So I'm just going to call this Josh S&F Studio and Field. You can do a lot in 2023 that you couldn't do in 2018 on the front end. You can pretty much set up your project. You can create a copy of the media, which is a great idea if you haven't duplicated your media yet. For me, it's been duplicated for a really long time. So maybe it's because I'm old school and learned a different way, but I don't really like all of this for myself. I guess over hundreds of projects in Premiere, I got used to just setting this up. This is probably a nice feature for you guys. If you like using it, it's wonderful. Make sure when you're copying that media, you're sending it to the right location though, because it's great to have it duplicated, but don't just bog down the lab desktops with every project you've done duplicating your media. Make sure you're sending it to a logical space, your own folder, sending it to your SSD, sending it to your own cloud, something in the case where it's not just sitting on the desktop out in the open. New bins, those are folders, same thing, some software calls them bins. I think of trash cans when I think of bins, so I like to refer to it as a folder, that's whatever. I'm going to do that in the software because I already have made them. And when I look at my folder and I'm looking at Tripoli Studio and Field, I have already made my own folders when I was organizing this. So I don't want to have everything imported in. It'll just drop everything inside one big bin, and then it's a mess. All this organization will go away. I've not lost time, but I've definitely had to restart a project before because of that. So I don't want to copy my media. I don't want a new bin. I don't want a new sequence. I'm going to do that when I get in there. because I want to have a sequence for the interview, and I want to have a sequence for the B-roll, and I want to have a master sequence where I assemble everything. So I don't want them to help me do that. Automatic transcription, I still haven't used this a lot currently, but yes.
I've been using this for all my videos.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Yeah.
use it. I don't like select it, but I will, like, once I'm done editing the entire video, I will like activate it, and
So you do it on the back end?
I do it on the back end after I edit everything.
Interesting. Why is that, if you don't mind me asking?
Because when I'm editing the video, I am like editing out specific parts. So when I'm making a game video or something like that, I will say something by accident, for instance, like something that could offend people or something like that, and I edit that out. I don't want the transcription automatically transcribing while I'm
That's a great point.
doing that. And so after I'm done editing everything, after I got all my animations, all my effects in there, all the stuff that I want in there, the back side of it, I will activate automatic transcription and mess with that.
So what do you use that transcription for?
I use it for captions.
Okay.
So for YouTube captions,
Great.
because
you can copy and paste them in there.
yeah, so when I'm speaking, like I can't, like when I'm speaking sometimes in my videos, I'm quiet and I can't, and I stutter a lot, and it's like people don't understand what I'm saying.
I mumble, so yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get that. You want, and YouTube captions is getting better. It used to be like what, an 80%. It's probably a little higher, but it's not perfect. You know, it definitely doesn't catch slang quite the same way.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic. So you use the transcription on the end in order to help you with captions later.
Yeah.
The reason you would use transcription on the front end would be to have that out. What we've done before, and before this was a feature, we would actually set and type out the interview. Well, on Stonehaven we had 17 interviews. We typed all those out, and then all the producers had a different color highlighter, and they would have their copy. We'd pass it around, and if everybody highlighted that same soundbite from the transcription without having to jump into Premiere Pro, because not everyone was like an editor or had access, that enabled us to really narrow out, okay, this whole paragraph at this timestamp was just not productive. It just didn't read to us. It didn't speak to us. So we would just use that as a way to cut down 17 interviews. So it took a few weeks of our friend Thomas sitting there typing it up. But after he did that, we were all able to share it amongst ourselves. This would have been incredible. It would have saved us so much time if we would have wanted to go that route. Now, I don't need the transcription for what I'm doing in this particular case, but I like that. That's nice. That's a really good thing to know. Thanks for sharing that.
Can you print that? Because I was going through Joey's interview.
I believe
last night.
so.
20
Yeah.
minutes worth of him talking, psychology talking.
So you didn't ask me about the CIA, because it would have been way longer than 20 minutes. Yeah.
No, but, you know, trying to trim that down to 5, just by ear, remembering where it was and
That's-
all of that is impossible. So how do I take that transcription from Premiere Pro in that window and put it on hard copy so I can go through? Yep, that's gonna be gone.
Yeah. How do you export it when you use it for that, Andrew?
How I export it? So I export it as SRT, I think.
An SRT file?
Yeah, so SRT, and so on YouTube, then I go into that and I will like say upload captions, and it has 2 options: create captions or upload file.
Mhm.
And I use the upload file, and then I select SRT file and I put that in.
And it just takes an SRT and converts it.
Yeah.
So I imagine if you created it, are you able to set it? Well,
The thing is though, that's,
let's just do one and take a long time.
it does take a long time. And for me, when I am doing it, it takes me about like an hour or so, or 30 minutes to like do the full thing, depending on how long the video is. Because of my insane mumbling, it is always like, I will say like Roblox, and it will be like roadblocks, as in a roadblock, not Roblox. So I'm like, I gotta fix all that, and so the transcription is not always that smart, but it will do select words, but it does make the job easy. But
So a couple things, because I haven't tried this particular feature, but it's worth digging into. I would say only do the ones in the sequence. Well, if you wanted to do all of them, that would make sense too. But if I'm going,
I did get Joey's, you know, I didn't want to do 30 minutes worth of stuff, like me talking, Aaron talking, all
Yeah.
those others. I just singled out the 2 clips of him, and, you know, I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I think let's go ahead and just try it, see what we have. It's interesting. I'm definitely learning along with you from that spot. So when I open up Premiere Pro, my interface is defaulted to whatever was either on last or I'm not even certain what this one would be. I'm going to look in my workspaces. I do have a saved one. This one says this is my saved one. It doesn't look like how I would have saved it. I can reset it to the editing ones, how I usually work. I like having my project media in the top left. It's a personal preference, I just always have. I want to be able to see everything here, my timeline or my sequence here, my tools off to the left, my audio and my color over here in the right. Especially because I'm not balancing audio or color until later, so I might even make that smaller or even take it away. I personally don't mind having it like that. And so now I'm going to import in from my SSD. There's a couple ways. Right click, drag in, whatever you prefer. You can also select import from other places. There's always about 4 different ways to do a couple of things, to do some of these things. So if I import, I could just take, I don't need the Premiere files, that'd be kind of silly, I'm just saving those. Everything else I'd like to have, I don't need the export either. So I may just go cam 1, cam 2, behind the scenes, B-roll, audio, drag that in. Nope, just click import. It's relatively fast, helps that I did 1080p, helps that I'm working from an SSD. Andrew, help me here if you know, does my transcription start as soon as these clips start coming in?
I have no clue.
Okay.
This is a first for me, what you're doing right now.
Sure.
You had to go into text,
Yeah.
Windows, and select the text.
I said only the ones in the sequence right here, so it's probably,
Yeah, so
Kinda
it probably, so when it goes into the sequence, it'll probably start transcribing.
and the only thing I'm missing here is my music, because I don't want my export cut, and I don't want my Premiere files.
But I think it also works when you highlight it as like, you know, like dialogue or things in the audio tab. I think that also is a part of the transcription program.
Sure.
I think that, because that's how it's AI things or
So
something.
it did something interesting. It made, my log was only one file, and my behind the scenes is only one file, so it actually took my bins away for whatever reason. I don't know why it did that. Because what if I, oh, not music, it's just audio. I like having bins. I don't like a big mess. Trust me when I say make it a practice to be organized, because you'll have, your projects are only going to get bigger as you go along, and if you're not organized on your smaller stuff, then it'll make it more difficult when you get more involved. I like to have a separate bin for my sequences, because I'm gonna have multiple sequences on any given project. So first thing I need to do, new file, new sequence. I'm gonna call this my interview. And now you see the sequence is created right here. This little timeline icon is how you know that's a sequence versus, because the thumbnail looks the same. So on his here, his cut 1 and 2, when I pull these in, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to ask for the sequence settings to be changed, which I'm going to allow because I know the camera settings are what I want. 1080p, 24 frames per second. And also you can see here, where now you can see that it's in a timeline, the little icon is for a clip and audio. Why is my audio not pulling in for this one? I know you guys have had the same issue. I've certainly had it. Before we address that, let's dig into, so if I go back, now see my sequence is interview, I want that in sequences. Because the sequence looks, except for the icon, looks just like the clip thumbnail from here. So if I just let everything pile in there, you're gonna lose stuff. And I can delete, like this is something that always stresses people out. I can close this, and it's not gone because I saved it in my sequences tab. every semester I get a couple people going, I just deleted my whole project, I have no idea where it's at. There is a sequence that's created, and when I double click it, I can pull it back in. Okay? Nothing too crazy, but there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for me to just get to that point. A lot of times losing my timelines, my sequences, not knowing where they existed, it can be very frustrating. So I can't always recreate these incidents, so this is kind of a happy accident. One thing I've tried is a couple of things. If your audio is not following your visual, I'm not seeing it here. So I have had luck restarting the computer, restarting the program. I've certainly tried different things to make it work.
Thing that I came into contact with.
So there is audio. I should probably double check that before I start trying all the other things. And I know this has been an ongoing issue for people as well. So I'm going to delete that one, pull this one back in. Okay, so cam 2, everything's pulling in just fine. That's nice. That something's working correctly. Now, normally if I had infinity time, wasn't trying to show you guys all this in the next 25 minutes, I would kill off Premiere Pro, restart it. I do that first. If that doesn't work, creating a new sequence, that can work. Didn't right there. I also will restart the computer. I've gone as far as deleting Premiere Pro and reinstalling it, uninstalling and reinstalling to get that bug to not, because I can see the audio exists. So for whatever reason, this is why people are very frustrated with Premiere Pro in general. I've never had this issue for, mind you, in DaVinci or Final Cut. But, essentially what I want to do for my interview is I need to sync up the audio from both cameras. Keep in mind this was only reference audio, right? Because it is definitely going to be not as high quality.
Tried to push me into drawing classes, painting classes. My mom.
And then here's from cam 1.
And that we should be content with carrying that weight. We all have that cross to bear. And
so that's him talking about Sisyphus. I know because it's on the back end of this. And keep in mind with the C100s, they will break files up based on when they get to so many gigs. I think 4 gigs or something. I know the GoPro that I have, it will record, keep going, but it'll make, if I record for 40 minutes, it will stop that, or it won't stop anything, but it'll create files like every 4 gigabytes roughly to make it a little easier to work on in post. Okay, so I pulled camera 1 in, I pulled camera 2 in. I'm going to pull in my lav, which is much longer because we started the lav and kept tinkering with stuff, talking to him. I like the lav is such a small file compared to the visuals that it makes it convenient to just let that roll and keep moving on to the next, to everything else, because it's edited. So there's no metadata in there. We export it out as a WAV file. It doesn't have all that metadata from the original. So a clapper stick is, a clapper spike is one of the best ways. I told you I'll clap if I don't remember to do the clapper. The other thing is now Premiere Pro, and I haven't done it in 2023, there is a way to connect all of these together. I'm going to try, okay, try just doing a couple. All right, so when I'm synchronizing, I don't want to do time code because I didn't take time code. I want to do audio. And if I do mix down, so synchronizing, I don't know if it's because I have multiple clips chopped up because our camera 2, he was stopping and starting a little more. Let's see how precise this is.
where I'm going to be able to take it, just even 10 years time.
Give a second to buffer.
So to be able to make a call as to what.
So that's such an easy way to do it. Oh my gosh, if we didn't have, so what we had, if I recall, we kept cutting because of the roommate getting ready up in the kitchen. So things were not matched up. Normally I just have camera 1 running and camera 2 running, but because camera 2 was stopping and starting for whatever reason, not because I wanted them to, we have clips in different areas. So let me try to sync all of them now. again, off of the audio, because I'm not big on time code, not that it's a bad thing, a lot of really big projects prefer time code, especially when there's a lot of moving parts. For me, I'm not big on time code. But if I didn't use the clapper, that makes it a little harder. So let's see how well this did. Let's mute everything except for our clean audio.
And I just think it's a great opportunity to see that over the course of 20 years of someone's life.
This, oh my gosh, I just love this feature. That saves so much time and headache. For instance, when we were in Chicago, so I didn't get to go to Chicago, and my brothers went, and they had one camera, which was like your DSLR that would only record for 30 minutes, and they ran a 2-hour interview. Not recommended, but this was a very unique situation with a very awesome subject. So one of our cameras is stopping every 30 minutes. The other one is running straight through because we didn't have the same model of cameras. And when I was going through syncing that, we didn't have a clapper for just the two of them. They were all by themselves. We literally just couldn't fit it on the train with all the other gear that we really needed. And so as I'm going through, I was going to have to do all that by eye, matching the hand movements, matching lips, trying to find, maybe he coughed at some point and I could find that spike. It was a pain. This synchronizing is just such a great tool. And this is why when people say they don't like AI and we shouldn't have AI in the classroom and blah, 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 is absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely. These are necessary tools to make you better at your job, more efficient, faster, and higher production value. Now, it is not perfect. I have done this feature, well, again, I've only used it in 22. This is the first time using it in 23, where it wasn't perfect and I had to go in and make slight little movements, or I had to like undo, and then do it again and kind of give it a chance to redo it and work. In this case, I think it did a pretty good job. I'm going to turn it up slightly. For whatever reason, Premiere Pro has a silly feature where you have to go in and add to like change the volume, and that's here. I got to drag it in. Something they should have fixed years ago, but whatever. And I can turn this up.
Can you talk about the imagery in emergence?
So emergence, it's kind of sitting at the cusp of representation.
A little loud
and
at some
abstract.
point,
So
but
it's-
sometimes
it's,
people throw their voice at the beginning. You're going to see often
forms
people
that are
will
kind of-
be louder at the start, and then as they get through their statement, they start to quiet down a little bit. Couldn't tell you exactly the psychology behind that, but I've noticed that a bunch. So when you're balancing audio, keep that in mind, that it might be hitting at a -6 at the beginning of the statement, it might be hitting at a -12 by the end. And maybe at that point, you just kind of need to take a break and give everyone a breather and catch a drink and use the bathroom break. So just stuff that you'll notice depending on different individuals.
So what was the difference between just dragging the decibel line and up and down versus what you found some icon in there?
Nothing other than I like to be able to see it, and this does say -3, 4, 5, but I've always liked having it on to the side right there.
I mean, is it doing the same thing?
It's doing the same thing. Yeah.
So it's a redundant.
It's one of those where it's kind of whichever one you're used to. One's not better than the other. Now that's a good question because that's just becomes a preference thing. So I like
So you weren't, that little icon didn't allow you to adjust that first section of the clip.
Let me say this. The difference between, so this one right here, the 11.3 in blue, is doing the entire clip. And so if I had 10 clips on here, all of them are getting adjusted. So I should make that point. And this one's only doing that particular clip. Now, if you're wanting to be more precise, the P tool leads to the pointer tool. You can also grab it over here. And then I could go in and say, okay, look, let me get back to the P tool. And I could say, oh, look, this is way too loud over here. That pointer tool will enable you to make some adjustments that are way more precise. So that does help. Have you tried that before?
I see it on tutorials all the time and then I forget about it.
Oh, okay.
And
I don't use it unless, like, see right here, if there's like a case where they like cough and it blows it out and I can't cut around it, I can't throw B-roll over it and just chop it out, then I might do that. You get cases where with some older people, they kind of get that like smack when they talk. Just something about when I interview someone over 90 that's pretty common. And it's not something that it's audible, but you really can't see it in their lips coming out. So I might use the pointer tool to like pull that down just to not have lip smacks and things like that. It's kind of silly. But I mean, it's been thousands of hours in the editor, you'll eventually be like, that's gotta be fixed. I can't listen to that anymore in this hour interview. It just kind of depends. So I wanted to show you that synchronize tool. Wish I could remember the name quicker. It's just so, I mean, it's just, to me, that was groundbreaking, coming from my background with how little we've had the ability, how much time I've spent just syncing stuff up. And let me see here. So we got clip 1, clip 2. This is clip 1 again, or sorry, this is from camera 2. I'm going to go ahead and sync this one, even though I don't have the camera 1 to go along with it. Oh, I got to have more than one thing selected, so it makes sense.
Will that synchronize like two different, if there was nobody talking, like music, two different cameras, start and stop, can you say synchronize these things?
I mean, that's a good, let me try and show you where my head's at kind of with that. In the case of how I did it, I was doing it based on audio. Now, let me pull my clip back in, that's broken currently, and try to sync that with this. Now it gives me the option, clip start, clip end. I mean, if you don't know how to drag it there, then I don't know why you would go off that. This is where timecode could potentially save my issue, but I don't have timecode saved and I don't have audio. So I pretty much am out of luck, I think. Let's just see.
Into drawing classes.
Yeah, it's definitely not matched.
Class.
Without that, I would have to sit and tinker to get that Premiere Pro to read that file or do something, restart it a couple of times to get that to work or keep working on a new thing there. But essentially, I need more metadata than what I have currently to sync those. If I'm liking to go off the audio here. And I'm really impressed with how quick it is too, because this is the audio clip that's green, that lav file, or that wave file from the lav, is 1 hour and 3 minutes. So this short little clip that I just pulled is only 1 minute and 12 seconds. It's 1/60th of that timeline, and it found it that quick. Let's double check that it worked.
And my interest in the art, so they would try and push me into any.
It's pretty darn good. From what I can tell, let's look at this one.
And I think that it is something that we're all born with.
No, that one doesn't.
It's just a matter of practice
No.
to really take.
It's close. I'm going to try and resync that. A cool new tool, but not quite perfect. But of the 3 of the 4 clips that it has synced, they looked pretty good, and that saved a lot of time for me there. See, it did move it slightly. Let's see if it's better. Maybe oh, you know what? I moved the wave file when I was tinkering with that other one, so that was actually me.
To the point where we can call ourselves artists.
It just shows you how easy it is to just get off a couple of frames and then boom, your audio is not synced and then your audience is walking out of the theater. So this is off too, I'm guessing?
Forms that are.
Yeah.
So select the files or the things you want, right click, find synchronize, and then select it and hit run.
If you go, I would go off the audio at the bottom because you have beginning of clip, end of clip, time code, and then you have the audio version, and that's how I've always done it.
They're kind of taking on a more cubist approach, how you might start.
Now, what happened there, what I did wrong, let me sync this one real fast. Because this is another part of our process that I want to point out. So you can avoid making that mistake that I made. Mistakes are the best way to learn. Otherwise, it doesn't quite resonate. Let's make sure it's there.
It's in my work. So I just kind of had a good.
So everything's matching up with clean audio. So now that I like how that is synced so that I don't lose it, I can highlight everything, right click, and then I can group it. So when I click one, it clicks all of them. So that way I'm not moving that bottom timeline, getting it out of place. So that's convenient. Once I also know that I have everything the way I like, if you saw my timeline from before, I'm going to unlink here. I'm gonna just destroy all of the reference audio. That's metadata I don't need. I don't want to use it anymore. I like what I got coming out of this one.
For 4 or 5 years now.
It's a lot quieter.
I hate saying that. But you know, I think ever since.
So I like to have a clean timeline, and I like it all to be linked up. And you can see here, this is like our
Says that were talking to me about real world and real jobs, and
basically we were just running through the questions with him while I was getting lights set up and everything. So all of that at the beginning can be chopped off because the interview actually started right here.
It's actually Ronald Reagan's hometown, but I have been here since I was about 7.
So I can already start deleting everything from the back, and now the total runtime is 53 minutes. If the interview does in fact end here, we went into our demo. So all of this is him doing demo work, and sometimes we would talk to him about that too, but for the interview, I just don't need that. So my timeline's getting cleaned up again. And I'm at 34 minutes from an hour and like 2 minutes of original lav interview audio and demo audio, but for the interview I just don't need all that. And then fixing my other file that runs all the way through. Likely somewhere in that capacity. There's those workarounds, you can get creative. There's a decent chance that
Support because it's art for everyone.
so basically what I did there is, because this one did work, I was able to put the other one on the front.
What you want and more about you know, the positive good you
Oh wait, should probably look at the right
can do in your community. Small scale work, you know, this is something that is just a little more manageable. It's something that you can work on.
So, took a little time, nothing too crazy. Granted, I've done hundreds of these, so I have workarounds I have ways to figure out when Premiere Pro doesn't do what it's supposed to, import audio with the video. At least the second clip had it, got that one synced. I knew that the clip wasn't a stoppage, it was the camera that stopped that file because of the size of the data accumulated. So this is a great point for me to get rolling into the next phase, which is trimming out all of us. Patrick talking, we didn't want the interview because it's not about the interview subject, he's not the artist as a subject, so we cut him out anytime we see his voice in here. So like there's Patrick talking, might even have camera clicks because of that behind the scenes stuff. Now I can start really trimming things up and what we call trimming the fat, getting everything out that's not necessary. I want, for instance, the KPTS TV edit needed to be under 5 minutes. I got to start getting down from an hour. I need 1/20th of what the original lav run was. So it's tedious, but it's all very necessary. I can see right here just from my waveforms that I'm not going to need any of this because Josh isn't talking. So in that case, I'm just going to go ahead and trim it out, and I'll see what is this part.
Of these abstracts.
So he's doing demo stuff, so I'm going to kill that off. This front
To
part.
really
Oh gosh, sorry.
Oh, heck yeah.
embrace the idea that I am an artist, because
And I'm pretty sure again these were like pre-questions.
long road of recovery. You know, I've been sober for about 5 years.
So that's where my video starts. All right, now I'm at down to 38 minutes. Looks like they're setting up here. I'm just going off the WAV files. I don't even have to look at the video for the first time in 5 years to know that we're probably just setting up all here. Now, when I'm shooting 1080p, I can just keep running because this whole file was like 8 gigabytes. If this would have been in 4K, it would have been more like 70 gigabytes. So you got to be conservative in different ways. I let it run because I knew I had plenty of card space. So sometimes you have that luxury. And it's just helping clean up my mess. Now I'm sitting at 33 minutes. I like to do an out point at the end so it doesn't restart.
Pretty good.
And I'm going to link it together again, or group it, so I don't get off the rails here. And what I do next is I like to start categorizing it. I don't have time to go into everything that I'd like to do, but I want to start categorizing the subjects. So let's see what he's talking about at this point. Just,
I've been here since I was about 7 or 8.
this was him running upstairs, if I recall, to go talk to the roommates, see how close she was going to work.
P-O-L-I.
Patrick really liked, my partner was really big on having people spell their names on camera. He learned that at his film school in Albuquerque because that way you'd have the right spelling, and you want to hear them say it so you have the right pronunciation. But the spelling for graphics and things like that, because you never know. You don't want to assume how someone's going to spell their name.
I am actually from Dixon, Illinois.
Okay, so that made it in at least a couple of the cuts. I don't know if we kept it in everything. Him talking about where he's from. Since I grouped it, I'm going to. I should have clipped all of it.
And Ronald Reagan's hometown is where I grew up until I was about 7 or 8. Then we moved to Wichita, close to my grandparents. So I've been here since and been practicing mission.
So that's a little backstory. It's nice to have. And I do believe that made it in most of the cuts. So now I'm going to unlink, or I'm going to ungroup here, and I'm going to label, and there's no right, this is how you decide to do it. I'm going to label it all consistently. So if it's his backstory, maybe he's talking about his family, maybe he's talking about his girlfriend, maybe he's talking about school, anything prior to that, I'm going to make that blue. And then when he's talking about his work, maybe I make that red. Now I'm going to start color categorizing things so that I can start to just get my head straight, because there's so much going on. And when you start tossing in all these interviews, it can get really, as Adam was saying, it can get really I don't know, kind of gives you anxiety a little bit, looking at this huge timeline, you got all this subjects happening, and even if you were organized like crazy in your questionnaire, sometimes those interviewees answer question 7 when you're talking about question 2, and now you're going, oh great, I'm not going to remember that, I'm going to have to find that, I'm going to have to label that. I like to color, we're very visual people, so for me, I like to color them up and to different, and you can create your own colors too. You can customize them. I really don't like Premiere's colors. I think they're very bland and flat, and they all look really similar. So I like to go in and make my own sometimes. You can do that in preferences. Where is preferences on that? I go to labels, maybe, and I can change the name, or see they have audio as Caribbean. Well, I can make that violet if I want, or I can just say purple, because I'm not crazy, and then make it actually look purple. Maybe. I don't know. I like to complain about Premiere for how much it's been a big part of my career. But look how bland these colors are. I really want more vibrant, separate colors so I can actually tell what things are. And they're not all that way, but some of them are. The mango I like to use a lot, and the green and the blue. But I might have 8 different subjects depending on the topic. With one person talking about their own selves as an artist and their work, maybe 3 to 5. And that helps get your head a little straight with that color labeling. And I usually write it out on my desk. So mango, orange, is going to be like history. Murals might be under green, and then painting might be under a different one, and then shows, accolades, inspiration, those kinds of things might all be labeled a little differently. This helps so much, and it'll help you. Does it seem time consuming when you could be cutting it? Maybe. If you only did a 5-minute interview, this might be redundant, a little too much. But if you have 17 interviews and 3 editors, be consistent so whoever's jumping in knows what you did and how it all worked. So with Stonehaven, I know history of the apple orchard. Brown was history, and then like pink was the woman who built the house, and then blue was the man who owns the house now. Because we were talking about a 150-year timeline with 17 interviews, and we shot it over the course of a few months. Way too much moving, way too many parts to just jump in a timeline to start seeing, winging it. So we're kind of running out of time. There's more we could cover. This is a great place to like help. This is what I do every time to some extent. Sync that audio. I create extra sequences just for my interviews, just for my master sequence where I'm going to add my B-roll. I like to label things when it's multiple projects, multiple things going on. Any questions at this particular point?
I don't know if you're gonna circle back to that transcription thing. How to work with it on.
Well, so the transcription was set to come. I set it so that anything in my timeline would be transcribed. I'm glad you brought that up because I did not have that. Okay, so here we have speech to text transcription complete.
So up where you click that
Uh-huh.
everything up there, there's another tab off the left, like far left right there.
Export.
Nope. Yep. It's gonna be under captions and graphics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Is it there? Yep, there it is.
Now my curiosity, because I think this is what Adam was kind of thinking
Yeah,
too,
I want
is
that on my desk as a paper form,
Yeah,
so
so-
I can.
how we export it, create captions, export, text file, transcript.
Text file is how you print it.
Okay, that would have been,
Now, you can also edit your timeline off of the transcription, right? You
Yeah.
can say, I don't like this timeline, and then,
you can. Let me make a new
And
folder.
that's actually better because when you edit it from here, it like has all the timestamps for all those words in it.
Yeah,
And so once you edit that, and then once you are completely done editing, you can create the captions, and it will automatically line them all up together to where
Yeah.
you
now
have
if they would do it
team
in
up.
Mandarin, that would be awesome.
well, it might, I mean, it's definitely global software. Here you can see,
I wouldn't touch
The
that, I
timestamp.
just want that printed so I can read through it and then go, okay.
yeah, I
this
totally
one, I want.
relate to that. So I exported it back to my thing, it's a text file, and I can see the time. Ooh, man, what a cool feature. Thanks for pointing that out there, Andrew, because I wasn't entirely sure where I was needing to go yet, so
Yeah.
that's helpful. And this is just one, it's not a long interview. I mean, the interview wasn't short as far as long as the log ran, but can you imagine typing that all up 17 more times?
Yeah, well,
Thomas really he really burned the midnight oil.
and
for,
that's
like,
why
3
I
years.
edit it before I transcribe it. So
So you edited in Premiere,
yes,
and I can say that wasn't practice, that was part, yep, yeah, cool.